what happens when your fundraising campaign flops completely and it is not what you expected? Honestly, ignoring the root issues won't just stall momentum for this season, but could really fracture the church's confidence for years to come.
Well, we hope that doesn't happen to you, but if it does, today we're going to unpack exactly how to bounce back from a campaign that missed the mark. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to regain trust, reset expectations, and hopefully relaunch stronger than ever before. It's never failure if you can learn something from it. We're going to talk about that here today.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to another Next Sunday podcast. I'm here with the one, the only, the incredible, the impeccable Jim Sheppard.
I thought somebody else was here today. I was looking around to see who else was here today.
Just me and you, pal.
You're too kind, brother. You're too kind. You're too kind.
Hey, we're building on something that had a minor diversion in the last episode. So in the last...
Wait, imagine this.
Minor diversion.
You and I did an episode with a little side road somewhere.
Shocker.
That happens.
So last week, or last time we were together, we talked about when you're working on a campaign or an initiative and the pastor starts to get some feedback that, hey, maybe we're not ready for this yet, or no, not yet, or there's some concerns or observations that have arisen and how we address those. So Jim, you did a great job of bringing some clarity and sharing some great stories around that. But we touched on this briefly and we said we'd come back to it. What do you do when you have a major initiative and you get to the end of it, there's pledge cards or however that works for the way that you chose to structure it, and you get to the other end of it and you're far below the goal, when your campaign doesn't hit the goal? What are some things that maybe if somebody's done it DIY that might lead to that? We'll touch on maybe some fundraising fatigue because they just did another campaign just recently. There was some confusion. But now you're on the other side, the most important part today. You're on the other side now, haven't hit the goal. How do you lead through that? What do you do internally, externally, publicly, privately when we're not making up this difference? There's a big disparity between what we thought everybody was on board for and what actually ended up happening.
Yep. I think there's a couple of things. One, Frank, I want to make sure that I do look at participation. Mm-hmm. Because if I had good participation, 78%, 80%, whatever it might be, and the money just wasn't there, I think that's a different answer than if just 28% of the people signed on with a commitment.
That's really good. And the point of participation, we do the best we can to figure that out, right? That's kind of a hard number to figure out, but we kind of set some standards and benchmarks and go, let's start with participation.
But if I know that I have roughly 1,000 families in the church, and I've got 745 commitment cards,
that's about 75%.
But the money is short.
Yep. It's a different issue.
That's a different issue than if I've just got 280 pledge cards and the money is way short.
All right. So let's start with low engagement.
Low engagement.
If that's what we identify as the problem.
Yeah. I think in the last episode, we talked about how do you avoid getting there. Mm-hmm. So we're assuming that someone has gotten there. Mm-hmm. And you've now got to figure out, how did this happen?
Yeah. And where do we go from here?
I think, and this is where it becomes a little bit dicey. Mm-hmm. I think it would be helpful if you could find 10 people, and I'm going to use 10 in air quotes. It might be more than that. But generally, you don't need a lot. 10 people who you look at the list and you're just scratching your head and saying, why didn't Jim and Nancy make a commitment? Mm-hmm. They've been plugged in here for a long time. Mm-hmm. I never heard from them. I never heard overt pushback from them, but they just didn't sign on. And if you can get a conversation and somehow say, hey guys, this is not about what you did. It's about what can we learn from what you and a lot of other people like you did. Because when we have an initiative and people like you, faithful, longtime supporters of ours, are not on board, we have to come back into the room and ask ourselves, what happened here? Mm-hmm. What happened here? And if you'd be willing, it would be very helpful for us. My guess is, Frank, you do have a few people in the church that you could ask that question to, right? Who would understand. And here's the thing, man. A lot of times when this happens, you don't hear the negativity. It's more like complacency or just didn't understand or just didn't get it. It wasn't I'm not against it. It wasn't I'm against it. It's just I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, this is where it can happen. You've heard me say this. I'm convinced that people know what they want to do with their money. And sometimes your project just doesn't align with what the people, your faithful supporters, are looking to do with their money. That can happen.
We have a church right now that I'm going to be meeting with this week as we're recording this, that their last campaign was for their next gen wing. And it was just a renovation. It wasn't particularly expensive compared to their budget. They did a very simple, very basic campaign, and it was overfunded. Now they're wanting to do a new building for an adult discipleship wing.
Yeah.
And we've already had conversation. We haven't even started yet to say, hey, that strikes a different chord. We're not saying it's a bad idea or you shouldn't do it. But just so you know, that is very different. So it wasn't like that gave you, we were so successful with that one. That was a small one.
Yeah.
This is a slam dunk because it just resonates differently.
Yeah.
Once again, not bad, not even wrong. It's just a reality we've got to navigate.
Yeah. So I think the whole idea of doing the autopsy and seeing what you can learn from it is really the first and foremost thing there. And not just to lay the blame on your people. I mean, there are churches that would do that. Well, I don't know why they didn't respond. Well, let's see what you could have done that could have helped them get it better. Did you spiritually lead them? Did you give them enough information, enough inspiration? Did you do enough advanced work among a few key people to see, do we have anybody who's actually on board the first 2 or 3 times they hear it? Because if you go to 4 people that you're like, these 4 ought to get it and be on board, and 1 out of 4 of them is on board, you probably ought to pause and slow down.
Yeah.
Again, that's kind of how do you stop yourself from being here?
Yeah.
My guess would be when you find yourself there, you didn't do those things, so now what do you need to do to kind of navigate the rest of the way? Learn from it. There could be some very valuable lessons about blind spots, things that you didn't see that once you see it from their perspective, you're like, of course they didn't.
How quickly do you start the autopsy?
I would start it very quickly. I think you have to get it while it's fresh, right? And so here's the thing. And so, you mentioned the word campaign fatigue a second ago. I love it when I hear that word because people like to use that word. But campaign fatigue is not purely campaign fatigue. It's symptomatic of something else.
Yes.
Most of the time, in my opinion, it's symptomatic of vision fatigue. You've not properly cast or properly refreshed the vision of where God's trying to take you as a church, right? And so why would I say that? My own church, our founding pastor did 13 giving initiatives in 42 years. Do the math, Frank. If you were there for all 42 years, you didn't have much time off. And by the way, our last 2 were the biggest ones. So it's not like they were having less and less. They were our biggest ones. Of course, we'd grown the church, right? But they were our biggest ones. And why is that? It's because he was so good. And I don't think he even knew he was doing it. I think if we had him right here and I said this to his face, he'd say like, hey, Jim, I appreciate you saying that about me, but I was not cognitively trying to do that. I was just doing what I knew I needed to do next. And he would cast vision and we'd take care of that building or that project or whatever it is. And the next time we had a campaign, it was building on that. Okay, now that we've taken care of that, now we got to take care of this.
Yeah.
Okay, now that and it was, you never got tired of hearing what he had next.
Right.
Never, because there's always,
wow.
Yeah. And he built up trust over the years, which trust is the currency of where people make big gifts.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody gives to something that they don't trust. And so he's building up trust over the years, but not only personal trust, but spiritual trust and pastoral authority trust and campaign success trust. You're like, this guy just doesn't, and he's not perfect. He would say that. He just doesn't miss a lick when it comes to these campaigns.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of missteps, small missteps along the way. Nothing like the kind of stuff we're talking about here today.
An autopsy isn't fun.
Not fun.
And you're there in a very discouraged time.
Yep.
So it's very tricky to stay focused, to make sure that you're getting the right feedback, that you don't get defensive while you're gathering that information, because it gets really, because you're hurt, right? I can't think of a scenario. We're not ultimately responsible for how big or small a campaign is. There's a goal set, and if everybody does their due diligence, pastor, everybody, it's going to be what it's going to be, and the Lord's going to show up in unique ways, and we're going to be surprised by some people's participation and non-participation. We're going to do everything we can. Ultimately, it's in the Lord's hands. Like, we can't get too hung up on this. But at the same time, as a lead pastor, we know it's going to hit differently and be hard for that goal not to be met.
Yeah.
And then at that moment, now we've got to go dig through this. That's and right. We're not going to get words of affirmation. We're actually looking for the non-words of affirmation. Where did we miss it?
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult in this season. Do you see?
And by the way, one of the things I would do, Frank, that not being defensive, I would commission someone who's not on the lead team to do this.
That is so good.
Okay.
That's so good.
Who doesn't have kind of their emotions, their raw emotional baggage that's sitting in there, and let this maybe 2 or 3 person, autopsy task force report back to the leadership team.
ATF.
And by the way, I think people are likely to give more honest feedback from somebody who's a little bit further down in the organization than somebody who's right up here in the top.
That's really good.
Circle.
Really good feedback. So one thing we've kind of alluded to, vision just wasn't clear. It was confusing.
Yeah.
So we said that can be a miss. Absolutely. That's where I'm so proud of so many of our consultants that are that extra set of eyes to look over stuff and kind of can raise their hand to help along the way, right? What a gift to be able to do that. Yeah. That extra perspective, fourth perspective. What are some other reasons we see that we fall short? And I'm going to put one out there, and then I know there are more. Let's talk about staff participation. Now, in the last one, we talked about setting staff up for success at the beginning and communicating. We missed that somehow. Or we squeezed it into a staff meeting and kind of, went right past that. What happens during the autopsy if you realize that there's really low staff engagement? Where do you go from there?
You're not asking a hypothetical question. You know this, right?
Absolutely.
You know you're not asking.
Sir. Just in breaking news on the next Sunday podcast. 99% of the questions I asked Jim, I kind of know where he's going to go, or I'm leading him somewhere. So if you've only been listening for a little while, I'll just go ahead and break that one loose. So yes, I was thinking about a very specific scenario. Details can be eliminated, but how do you navigate that?
Names will definitely not be used to protect the innocent. Although if any of them listen, they'll know I'm talking about them. They listen.
But let's talk through it. So what do you do when you realize that you thought staff were on board? Because while you may have one church in mind, this has happened many times.
It happens more than once.
Yes.
Not a lot to our team, by the way.
Right.
Our team's not perfect, but sometimes things happen on our watch.
Yep.
And this was one where, for me, after having 3 decades, this is a church that you would not think this could happen to. They're well known. You would not think this could happen to them. There's nothing outwardly that would suggest that. The senior leader, the leadership team, there's nothing that would suggest it. And so this is a lesson for anybody, because after 3 decades, I let something that was, as it turns out, fairly obvious, I tried to rationalize it. No, this is just a late blooming campaign. It happens every now and then. Some campaigns, they're like flowers. Some bloom early, some bloom late, but they bloom, right? In this particular church, the pace setters were slow getting on board, that first group of people. The leaders, that second group, our advanced commitment night didn't produce what we thought it was supposed to produce. And I'm looking at it, and I was like, what's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here? And we get to the end, and we're about, our commitments are about 65% of the dollars that were in the goal, okay? There's a bigger story, and there's some other issues that are out there. But when we're doing the autopsy, and I've seen, and this is a low participation rate among the church, I said, not knowing where this was going to go, hey, can somebody just look at the staff commitments for me? I'd just be interested in knowing what our staff commitments are.
Not the dollars.
Not the dollars. How many people on staff? I just want to know how many people on staff
pledged to the campaign,
in a card for this particular initiative. Not a small church. 107 people on staff. 43 turned in a commitment.
That's a problem.
That's a big problem. Because even in a church where 70 to 75, maybe 80% of the 1,000, if I knew it was 1,000 and I'm looking for somewhere between 700 and 800 cards, I'm expecting 90%, if not 100% among the staff. Even if your commitments, I know for some staff people it's hard. You're a single mom, divorced, and you're a ministry assistant to a staff person, and you're the primary income breadwinner for you can't do, but you can do something. You could say, I'll give $25 a year for the next 2 years, whatever that might be. And for that person, that might be a bigger gift than the person giving $100,000. You and I both know that. Everybody who's listening here knows it.
And it wasn't unclear that we were asking everybody to participate.
It was not unclear.
Everybody participate at whatever level, no mandates on the level, but there was an expectation among staff and an invitation to the whole congregation.
Correct.
We're shooting for 100% participation.
Actually, we said engagement. I use engagement.
Yes, engagement.
I use engagement.
Better.
Because you might be in a situation where you engage with the process, asking the Lord what you do with the card, and your answer is, I'm not in a position to do anything.
Yeah, that's so good.
Right?
Thanks for clarifying
filling out a
that.
card is not the only way you participate. Engaging with that process and answering the question. So I saw that and I was like, well, whoa, wait a second. There's our problem. The staff wasn't on board. Our staff wasn't on board. Then I go back and look at the staff and spouse night. It didn't go off the way we wanted it to. And of course, they're very aware of this because the pastor's been talking about it every week. Well, then I asked this question, Frank. I asked the second question. I was like, hey, so let me just ask this question. That was the capital campaign commitments. How many of those people are giving on a regular basis? Frank, nobody had checked that and known that. Now, that may be a whole nother conversation for us to have. You don't want to be heavy-handed about it, but I mean, if you're on staff here, this is a calling, not a job.
Yeah.
And if it's a calling, then you're going to participate in this as if you were a member of this church.
Yeah.
Because many of you are part of this church. And you need to be on the front lines of advancing the cause in every way, shape, and form, including with your own giving. It was roughly the same, a little bit different. There were a few people who were giving that didn't make a capital campaign commitment and vice versa.
Yeah.
But it was roughly the same number of people. I think it was 41 out of 107 were actually giving to the church on a regular basis. So what happened was the capital campaign surfaced a staff culture issue.
Yes.
The staff culture issue actually ended up translating to the congregation, even though the congregation doesn't know that that's the staff giving. That nobody knows this.
Yeah.
We didn't publicize that to the church.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be any reason of that. But we're just trying to figure out why was our participation in the church so low? It's because we don't have a culture of staff participation translated out there, right? And you can say, well, Jim, what does that have to do? It has everything to do. As goes the staff, so goes the rest of the church.
Yeah, absolutely.
Generous churches are led by generous pastors. Really generous churches are led by pastors and their staff.
Yeah.
Led by generous pastors and their staff. Because the more that you have that, the more that you have that culture. And so, they're dealing with that. They're working through some of that, to their credit. And we figured out some other things to do to advance. The good news is, part of this was for buildings, part of it was for vision expansion.
Yeah.
So there were some intangible things in there. So we were able to rework some of the dollars and they were able to move forward and do some things that are going to be very positive. But that's an example of something that just showed up. And once we did the autopsy, we found something about the ongoing culture of the church. They're like, there's our issue.
Yeah.
If we deal with that next time around, we'll be a lot better off.
Yeah. And here, I just want to give
painful, but beneficial.
Painful but beneficial. That's really good. I do want to give a word of encouragement here. Most churches, there's so much happening every week And Jim, I don't know if you noticed this, but Sunday comes every 7 days, whether we're ready or not. Every 7 days, it just keeps coming. And there's all the ministry, all the programming, and all these people keep showing up. We got to take care of them, no matter the size of your church. Doesn't matter.
I'll never forget early in my career, and I knew this intuitively, but when he said it out loud, I understood it. This pastor was talking about the week-to-week preparation. He called it the tyranny of Sunday.
The tyranny of Sunday.
The tyranny of Sunday.
Just keeps coming.
It's relentless.
Just keeps coming.
It's relentless. You
can't stop it. And so we recognize that. And so somebody on this, listen to this podcast might be like, well, I can't believe they let their staff get there. I can't believe they didn't look. Or I can't believe they didn't this. Because everybody's going a million miles an hour. We're trying to do our due diligence, not just in campaign season, but just like pastoring our staff well. There are so many things we need to look at. Bible studies and participation and volunteering and serving and how long they've been around. And are we doing staff fitness challenges? And are they participating in this? There's all kinds of stuff culturally to look at. But I'll say, over the last few episodes, we have given casual reference to metric after metric after metric of different ways of looking at things that somebody's got to keep their fingers on the pulse. And it's very easy to not do that in the midst of everything else going on. There's just so many moving parts. So I just want to encourage you, show yourself some grace, especially if some of you have a reaction and while you were listening to this podcast, you texted somebody and like, hey, I want to know if any of our church staff are giving or not giving, and you're like trying to get answers. You may not get the answers you want. You might be a little discouraged by those answers, but where do we start from here and we move forward, right? And so it's like we don't need to overreact. We do need to course correct because there are so many moving parts. It's very easy to move on to the next thing and kind of forget or take your eye off this ball because you're watching all the other things that are happening. And so I just want to encourage you that you may get under the hood and find some things that need improvement that have nothing to do with the generosity initiative and everything to do with the culture of your church or staff. We're doing the best we can. Let's get better. This next Sunday, let's get better.
You know, and I think I feel like I would be remiss, Frank, if I didn't just go back to that issue on staff giving and emphasize this is not a compliance issue.
Yes.
It's a pastoral issue.
Yes.
Just like it would be with a giver. You know, what is it going on with you? What's going on under the hood that's causing you not to give here? Let's deal with that over time. It's not, hey, Frank, you and Jessica are going to have to start tithing with your next paycheck, or it's going to be the beginning of the end around here. That is not what we're talking about. That's so totally not what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
It's really a flag for you to say, in this particular case, what are these 60 people on our staff? What's in them that's causing them to believe that that's actually okay? And how do we deal with that?
I was talking to a sizable church not too long ago, maybe over the last year, and they had a good amount of that. Their church had shrunk in size, and so their giving had gone down. They started to grow again, and they took some initiative and they were evaluating, and they discovered that some of the staff weren't giving. Interesting. Once they got under the hood, it's just a compelling story of like, okay, let's talk through this. Let's work through this. A group of staff members found out that one of their favorite parachurch organizations that was being supplemented by the church had to be cut off the list because giving had gone down. And so they all started giving over there to supplement this organization that was struggling, okay? We can have all kinds of theological conversations around that. But here's what I will say. I think they were just trying to do good. And a group of them just rallied together and were trying to meet a need specifically for orphans. So it's like not like some random thing. This is straight out of the book of James 1:27. I mean, they were doing good work. Right? I think it's 127. I'll have to fact check myself.
You're
on that
the one fact checking over there with the Bible. I'm not.
It's not me. This just in. Jim, talk for a second. I'm going to open up my Bible and check real quick. But anyway, so it was a heart thing. We needed to have a conversation about. That's right. But it wasn't malicious or mad at the church or disengaged or anything. They were just trying to figure it out. James 1:27. Let's read what it says on the spot. See if I was right or not. religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. There we go. I did. Yeah. Remember that one time I got the Bible reference right, Jim?
Today?
Today was that day.
It would be my luck. See, I'm the guy who would say something like that. This, of course, is a totally different place in the Bible. I'd be making a point out of the Gospels, and then you'd look it up, and you're like, hey, Jim, that verse says Jesus wept.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, that's not the one I was thinking.
Not that one. Not that one. Hey, some of you may be weeping because of this conversation, and we apologize.
Here's what I want to say. I want to come back to this, because I think what we're doing is, it may feel like we've gone down a different lane, but we haven't. What we're trying to say is, when you find yourself having gotten out over your skis and you've gone way ahead, you're running ahead, and you're dealing with this thing, this initiative that fell way short, it's not about that. It's about what's going on underneath the hood. What's happening in the life of your church that caused that to happen, and deal with that. And that's healthy. That's how healthy leaders. I think the unhealthy way, Frank, would just be to blow that off and, well, God, we're not supposed to do that, so let's just move on. And now you move on, and now you become the church that's known for idea du jour.
Yeah.
That one didn't work, so let's try the next one.
Yeah.
And you and I both know, people begin to say, well, sit tight. We're not going to act on that one, because if we'll sit tight long enough, pastor will have a new idea, and we won't have to worry about that one. And you don't want to be a church like that, because that's unhealthy behavior. Yeah. You want your church to say, man, I'm so proud of my pastor and our executive team, and how they listened, and how their posture of humility allowed them to see things about their leadership and about our church that we would not have found out except for this.
That's so good.
Right? But again, back to the previous episode, what can we do to keep ourselves from getting here? Because this stalls momentum in your church. You can't just come back after you've done your exit interviews and say, okay, we're back and we're going to crank this thing up again. This is V2.0, says no church ever.
Right.
That's not going to work. You're going to have to pause for a while. And so that new kids building, that new piece of property, that new parking space, whatever it is that you were going to do, is now not going to happen. There's a very, very high price for moving ahead with an initiative that doesn't have a good chance of success. A very high price. And it's not just the money you don't raise. It's all the other things that don't happen because of that.
That's so good. This has been another episode of the Next Sunday podcast. We hope it's been
stirring the pot,
super helpful as he stirs the pot. Hope you take some action items that will truly make a difference next Sunday.
Next Sunday.